Welcome to another episode of The King's Couch. I'm your host, Sulo King, and today I have a very special guest. He's a man of many trades. He's everything from a musician, an artist, an author. He's got a PhD. He even brought some of his art pieces, and he brews beer and has his own beer club called the El Rey Beer Club, which I have been invited to be a part of in the last year, and I'm excited. We actually have a couple beers here that we brewed at the last brewing session over at Citizens Brewing. So let's go ahead and crack those open.
I'm representing. I got my Citizen shirt on right now.
That's right.
Oh, for sure. Let's do this.
Cheers.
Steam beer. Salud.
Yeah, so J. Michael, welcome to the King's Couch. And it's a pleasure to have you here. Him and I have a long history of being friends. We've been friends since the 90s. I think we met in 1997. Back then, he had a band called Kill Me Kate, which I was a big fan of, and I still think your band from back then holds up and is still a great band. And I recently actually just motivated him to put everything up on SoundCloud.
Yeah.
So it was great because those CDs got stolen a long time ago.
Yeah, I don't even have a copy.
You know, and I hadn't heard those songs in probably 20-something years, so it was nice.
Yeah, we recorded that album in like 98. Mm-hmm. And I know you were trying to do some reunion shows, and I tried, I talked to the guys, but they're like, oh no, I'm old. I don't want to be on stage. I don't want to do that anymore, so I get it.
Yeah, so. It's tough. I mean, some people are just kind of overplaying music and don't want to go back to doing it, or have current projects and have no, desire to reunite with their, high school bands.
Right. It's true.
Yeah.
It's true.
I know. But yeah, so we have a lot to discuss on today's episode. He's a man of many trades, like I said.
I know a thing or two about a thing or two.
Yeah. He had a pretty flashy entrance. He rolled up in his 52 Chevy, which was unexpected yet pretty cool at the same time.
Thank you.
And it definitely got a lot of notices from my neighbors. He couldn't even make it out of the car door without getting compliments. So that was cool. And here we are. So what I like to do with all our guests at the very beginning is go to the beginning of their early childhood influences. Like what got you into playing music, what was like the first creative thing that really, spawned everything to where you're at? So let's start there.
That's a good question. I started playing bass. I was never really a guitar player. I started playing bass, when I was like 15 or 16. And it was kind of just before that whole new wave of punk kind of dropped. So I was learning how to play to songs like Nirvana songs and things like that. And my first show was actually Nirvana. Me and my buddy Sean Erler, he and I went and saw Nirvana when we were little, and that's probably what motivated me to buy an instrument and learn to play. So, and then Kill Me Kate was my first actual band, and we started that in high school my senior year, and we played our first show at Soma. January of 1997, shortly before you and I met, and that was right after I graduated.
Yeah.
So that's kind of where I got my start. I mean, it didn't stick with electric bass. I moved on to upright bass later, and I played for Hardfall Hearts and did a European tour with them and a Southwest tour with them as well. So
yeah, I remember I did near the tail end of Kill Me Kate. I wanted to kind of help you guys book shows.
Yeah.
Someone kind of help you co-manage the band, and then remember that band fell apart and kind of went our separate ways for a little while, and then you started playing out again. This time it was psychobilly music, which was interesting, but I've seen that transition happen a lot with people from
I didn't go straight into that. Yeah. I was playing electric bass for Embalmers, actually, just before Hardfall Hearts, and that was more, at that time the band sounded more like the Cramps, did some Rocky Erickson covers, stuff like that, but I really took a big break from music about less than a year after I decided no more Kill Me Kate, and I ended that band. I raised my hand and I enlisted in the military. And about 2 weeks after that, September 11th happened. So as you can imagine, that was kind of an eye-opener. And Tuesday will be 22 years that I've been enlisted. I'm still in. I'm in the reserves, the National Guard, and I work there full time. So So yeah, I definitely took a long break from playing music. And I missed it. That's why I came back. And I haven't been on stage. The last time I was on stage was with Rip Carson up in LA, like one of those Viva Cantina shows. And I wasn't even married then, and my son's 8. So as you can imagine, it's been like 10 years since I've been on stage. So I am kind of itching to do that. And things like art and writing and other things like that have kind of kept me sane. Like being on stage, I hate all the drama of being in a band, but I like being on stage, and I miss that a lot.
Yeah, I mean, I'm kind of reaching that point with Authentic Sellout. I've had that band for almost 17 years, and it's hard to, motivate the guys now because they all have kids, and I'm the only one that doesn't and is not married or in a long-term.
We're all living vicariously through you, man. Keep up the good work.
Well, this round I've only been single a couple years, so it's kind of interesting, But I do have, my animals. I have dogs. Kind of like the audience just checking us out over there.
We would call that a toilet paper dog in my house.
Yeah.
You just kind of. You're fluffy.
Yep. Fluffy and small.
Yes.
She's 18 years old. She's an absolute sweetheart.
That's an old dog.
A very smart and loyal
Looks like
dog.
a puppy.
Yeah. And she still has that youthful energy.
Yeah, the fountain of youth over here.
Yeah.
Well, when she dies, you'll bottle her up and you can sell that stuff, make some money. Share
that secret with the world. After I successfully clone her.
New endeavors.
So, at what age did you decide you wanted to start playing music?
I think I was about 15 or 16.
And you chose the bass out of all instruments.
Yeah.
I'm always curious why
guitar's got too many strings, man.
Yeah.
Yeah, they're so small. I mean, I just couldn't do it.
Like some people see other musicians, and be like, hey, I want to be like that guy. Was that kind of your situation, or?
No, I mean, I kind of taught myself how to play. There's some people who gave me pointers here and there, but I really learned by like watching other people how they did it and kind of picked up their style and incorporated my own. So, especially with like the upright bass, Heartful Hearts were on tour, and they were kind of having an issue, and where the drummer and the bass player decided they didn't want to play together anymore. I think what it was, and so each of them were like texting me from the road, like, "Hey man, you should pick up an upright bass and learn how to play and join our band. Hey man, you should replace me. I want to do something different." I'm like, man, I don't even know how to play the fucking upright bass.
Yeah.
So I bought one, and then a couple people showed me a few things, and I just fiddled around with it. I got their CD and kind of learned the songs as best I could, and had one practice with Eli, who's since passed, just him and I, and then like a day or two later had one practice with Brian, the singer, guitar player, and then they're like, okay, cool, we're going to do a show. So I think the third time, like we really got together was a show, and it was a brand new instrument that I'd been playing for like less than a month.
Interesting.
So kind of learned how to play that instrument while I was in a band playing the instrument, so that was kind of an interesting process.
Back then I was still booking at Brick by Brick, and I remember I used to book, I go back to the Handsome Devil days. With
Brian.
With Brian and Eli and all that, and I was so stoked on that sound, because there's not too many good, like, rockabilly bands. Everyone was doing psychobilly for the most part.
Yeah, it was right in the middle, that kind of neo flavor where it was the Quakes, Stray Cats, but something a little different. So some like semblance of 80s and the 50s, and then something new added, like sprinkled in. It was
have it in our backyard locally.
Yeah.
It was really cool. And to see you eventually join was a nice surprise. Because I hadn't seen you play musically for years, and we hadn't really talked much or seen each other much in that time frame. So that was cool. And the 2000s was just a fun era for music here in San Diego.
For sure.
Things have definitely changed since, and we're a lot older now, and we've done a lot more since, I went on and opened up bought a an existing recording and rehearsal studio and enhanced that and had that for 7 years, and now I'm a health and wellness coach.
Yeah.
Beer does the body good.
Yes, it does. So, yeah, I brew beer, but I don't drink a lot of. I don't sit around and drink beer all day long. It's with El Rey Beer Club. I've been doing that. I started it in January of 2019, and then I got deployed to Africa. As soon as I got back from Africa, COVID, and then I got sent to Germany for 6 months, and so
Africa.
the whole dream of getting this club started got put on hold by a lot of variables that were out of my hands. But when I got back from Germany, that's when I kind of hit it. And in May of this year, I actually incorporated, so we're a nonprofit social club.
Yeah. So I'm stoked for that.
Yeah.
I watched it grow since you introduced me to it.
Yeah, you came to our first end of year social over at Citizen Brewers. That's
October
what we
last year.
Yeah, it was like a Halloween theme we did.
That was cool.
So
Yeah.
The next one's going to be at the Tower Bar in November around Veterans Day, and Mick, who owns the Tower, he's a member of the club as well. So what's been fun about the club is that I got to essentially take a piece of my family's history, because my great-grandfather, Big George Niotta, he owned the El Rey Brewing Company up in the Bay Area. Bought that the last year of Prohibition, when the legal limit went from like 1.0 to 3.2. And so all these breweries started opening up again. And then my great-grandfather was kind of like an outlaw entrepreneur, became their SoCal distributor for about 6 months. Heard they were having some money issues, and so smack in the middle of the Great Depression, he like strolls up from LA with like about $50K in cash and kind of just takes over. So and they had like a semi-pro ball team and everything. So with the club, I get to take the original logos and labels and whatnot from the 30s and kind of repurpose them. And we've done a handful of beers where we've tried to recreate it. And with that, it pretty much started with my first book, The Los Angeles Sugar Ring, because I was interviewing all these older relatives to do a biography about my great-grandfather, my other great-grandfather, and I heard this interesting story, like, oh yeah, we used to own a brewery. And I take everything with a grain of salt. I love hearing old stories, but then I do all the research. Come to find out, we bought it in October of 1933, and so I have a whole chapter in this book that has like the history of that brewery, and their staple was steam beer, which is this, and
which we're drinking,
enjoying right now.
Yeah, that we brewed ourselves.
And Anchor's they're closing their doors right now, but they're the kind of like staple that held the flag for that kind of beer since 1899. But the guy who actually started the brewery that my family bought, Tornsberg, he was already famous as like the avatar of steam beer before Anchor Steam even opened their doors. Right. So kind of got family ties. Like what we're drinking here is like a gold rush, like 1800s beer. That's pretty cool. Piece of history.
So he rebranded the name of the brewery to El Rey? Is that what he did?
So no, there was a Los Angeles businessman, an oil man named E.J. Preston, who bought the U permit that said, okay, you're allowed to reopen this establishment and to brew beer. And they just signed the Colson-Harrison Act, one of the two. And that's what bumped it up to 3.2. And then people were like, oh, hell, I can make beer. I can brew beer at 3.2. Before that, it was just 1.2 or whatnot, near beers. So he just went ahead. He probably knew nothing about beer, but he was an entrepreneur, and he went ahead and secured the permit, bought the building from the original owners, and got the recipes. That was a big thing.
Oh, cool.
And started doing all the old beers from the late 1800s and prior to Prohibition. So.
Okay. And it was called El Rey at the time?
It was called the El Rey Brewing Company, opened in 1933.
And how long did your family have the brewery for?
We bought it in October of 1933, and it got rebranded again in 1938 to Albion, which was a beer that they were brewing towards the end. And then after that went bankrupt, it became Eagle, which was the original name of the brewery going back to 1899, I think. So we had it from 33 till about probably 36 or 37. And beer actually started coming out in cans during that time. And I have something. I'm going off camera.
He has a surprise for you guys. Watch out.
Excuse me, Mimi. And beer started coming in a can in 1935, and at the time, we still owned the brewery. And when they first came out, they came out in these nifty little cans called cone tops. As you can see here, kind of looks like a dot.
What is it called,
can.
sorry?
Cone tops. So this one was repainted a little bit, touched up, but I have a handful of these. Are hard to come by, and the other ones look like somebody ran it over.
Looks like an old oil can. Or
exactly,
something.
yeah, like dot 3 or something.
Cone top?
Cone top.
Yeah.
Yeah, we didn't get
Cone
the
top.
flat beer
Cone
cans
top.
came later. Usually
Interesting,
with
yeah.
the peel tops
Yeah.
and whatnot.
And the old flat cans had a different feel than obviously what we have now. Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It was interesting learning how to can a beer.
Yeah.
That was pretty cool. I didn't realize it was that simple of a process.
Yeah.
You know?
Well, I mean, the newer canner that they just got over there,
Yeah.
just kind of one-stop shop, stick it in or push the button. I like the older
I
kind
like,
of feel.
that's an interesting, fun feel.
Yeah.
Yeah, it takes the fun out of it, putting it in the machine. I mean, if
Yeah.
you're trying to do something and you're pressed for time, the machine definitely comes in handy, and I get that. But, you know, hand cranking it and, you know,
There's an art
fucking
to
up
it.
on a couple
Yeah.
beers here.
That's how you get nicknames in the club, by fucking up.
Yeah,
So.
well, you know, it took me 2 tries to get it right.
Yeah.
You know, I had to get the finesse right, and I did. So I was stoked, and it's a prideful feeling when you can a beer, you know, and it comes out successful like the one I have in my hand.
Kind of like the whole reloading ammunition. Like they have machines where you go and it does everything, and then you have like the single steps where you got to go through it, everything, and there's precision to it, there's an art to it. If you fuck up, then it's going to show. And that's kind of why I like teaching people on the older machine still, because we're not here to crank out, we're not production, we're not profit, it's a non-profit,
Right.
it's a social club, we're doing this for fun. Beer's arbitrary, I love it, it's fun, but really it's arbitrary. The main purpose is some adult time away from our kids and kind of like see some of our friends that we don't get to see too often.
Exactly. It's just like when I do my birthday celebrations, it's the same excuse. Someone asked me once, actually it was my ex, and she's just, aren't you a little old to have birthday parties? And I was like, you know what, this is an excuse for me to get all my buddies together, and I love networking, and it's great to see new friendships come about when I introduce people that don't know each other.
Right.
You know, even though a lot of us are interrelated through the same, you know, music scene or whatever social circles. But yeah, with the El Rey Beer Club, when you told me what the name was, I was like, well, it's very fitting.
Yes, the king, Sulo King, yes.
So of course I wasn't going to decline, you know, that offer. And and I'm stoked that I've had a great time. I love the setting over at Citizens Brewing. Anyone that wants to brew their beer there can go and
yes,
you know,
it's like our unofficial clubhouse, but it's not ours.
Yeah.
Judd McGee, it's his place. The guy's a wizard. He's a really cool,
Really
humble
nice guy, yeah.
He's an honorary member of our club as well. So if anyone wants to learn how to do it, just come down to Citizen Brewers. It's in Grantville area, like right off the.
We'll put a link up,
yeah,
so people can check that out. If you guys are interested in brewing your own beer, or learning how to do it, it's a fun experience, you know.
Yeah, we did. We've been trying to, with the club, like our next session is going to be late September, and we're trying to up our female presence membership. So we're having a date night couples brew. So we'll probably have like the prospects and the actual members kind of like just steering so we don't blow up the kitchen kind of a thing, but it'll be more of a social event than anything.
That's cool.
And then what we're actually brewing will be served over at the tower for our end of year party.
Cool. And when's the end of year party? Have you scheduled that yet?
It's either the 10th or 11th. I haven't actually put the flyer out yet. I think it's Friday.
Okay.
Yeah, and that's going to be open to everyone, so anyone can come, and we'll have taster tickets, we'll have DJs,
Cool.
probably a beer raffle, things like that. So I think we'll have 3 beers that we brewed, including I think some of the steam there as well. So it's
open to the public,
imperial.
or is it?
Yes.
Okay.
There'll
cool.
probably be like something like a $8 or $10 donation, and we're a nonprofit, so that's all going to go to like the DJ and the door guy. And things like
costs.
that, so.
Cover costs. Yeah. Cool. Right on. So anyone that wants to go to that, I'll keep you guys posted when that comes, you know, out and is approaching closer to that date. It's crazy how fast this year has already flown right by.
August, right?
Yeah, we're
late August,
approaching Labor Day, and I feel like it was just Memorial Day last week. Yeah, but then again, I mean, look at how long we've known each other. Like before you came over here, I started thinking about the old days and how much fun we had, and so playing at Soma,
More than a
going
quarter
to
century,
Soma.
dude.
Yeah, I mean, Soma
Jesus.
inspired me like so much, and I became the figure in the music scene that I was and still am today because of going there as a kid and being inspired by people like you, seeing people in bands opening up for their heroes and promoting their own shows and whatnot.
I love you too.
Yeah, man. You
Salud, man.
Salute to being friends for 20 plus years.
25 plus,
Yeah,
man.
25 plus years. Losing track of time already. And yeah, I mean, it was interesting when we did that episode that never aired when they were reformatting the Soma podcast show.
Yeah.
And hearing all the old war stories.
That was a lot of fun, man.
Yeah.
I got to hear it, but
I still have
never
the
went
audio.
live.
I still have the audio of it. Maybe I can convince them to put it out as a B-side or something.
I don't know.
Special edition episode. Who knows? But regardless, I still have it.
Germ's a prospect in the club too, so he's been brewing with us, and
Germ Adams, who originated at the very first Soma when it was in downtown on Union Street. So he is part of the club, and I'm stoked to see him there. And Robbie, who you were also in a band with.
Yeah, he was in Kill Me Kate.
And seeing him there for the first time in many, many years was, exciting for me. Just to catch up with him and see what he's been up to all this time. Yeah. And that's the cool part about any kind of like social club or gathering, when you put people together like that, it's just, it's a good way to reunite, old friendships and start up or reignite old friendships again.
Right.
Because, that's life. We all kind of go our own separate ways and start families, or some people are just eternally single like me.
And with that, like sometimes it takes like losing somebody as well. Like my friend Sean Erler, he passed recently, and I went to junior high and high school with him, and my first show with him. And
he was the one that passed away when you had everyone go to the library, right? And meet up.
He passed on Father's Day this year.
Yeah.
And we all met up at the living room shortly after. And it was all like a 90s reunion, seeing some old friends.
Living room. Well, I don't know why I said the library.
Yeah. Just staring at my books.
That's the bar.
So, yeah, here, I'll drink to that. But so with that, like Sean, he's the one that kind of got me back into art. I was doing art. Before I was doing music, when I was a little kid, I was like doodling, and that was kind of my thing. And then it took a back seat when I did music. And then when I exited the music scene, it's kind of what kept me sane, just doing art. And I started doing it again more than maybe about a dozen years ago. And I've been painting now, because before I was just markers and pencils and pens. Been painting like, I'd say about 10 years, and started actually doing shows with Sean, because he was doing the thumbprint gallery things down at downtown. It's like every other Tuesday or Thursday at Bar Basic, a pizza joint there. So started doing shows with him and meeting people in that scene and having a good time.
Cool.
And he actually influenced me to start getting into like mixed media. So like that small painting right there, if you want to pull it.
We have a few of his pieces that he brought in.
That one in 2018. And that was like one of the first ones that I did, that kind of where I incorporated, this one I've got an actual pair of scissors like suspended in there. And this is Elizabeth Short, the Black Dahlia, that murder. Most of my artwork, unfortunately, is women who are not alive. And
everyone's got their thing, it's cool.
We can get into that.
Artists
if you want,
are dark, demented people, so. But
yeah, Sean really inspired that in me, and then I hadn't done anything since he passed. And that piece over there, it's finished drying yesterday. It was the first new piece I've done in probably like 8 months. And I think she's not necessarily dead. She kind of looks dead, but I incorporated like an old knife here. So I used to go to the swap meet, Kobe's.
Yeah, I love Kobe's.
And I would always just walk around looking for bric-a-brac and like old magazines and shit that I could cut up and throw on a canvas. And I would always run into Sean there, and he was doing the same fucking thing.
That's rad.
So it was kind of a thing that we had in common that we liked doing, and yeah, I miss him. Yeah, he was my crazy friend. So
well, cheers to him. I wish I could have known him better. I mean,
him and Robbie actually, they kind of started hanging out towards the end, and
I knew who he was, and he probably knew who I was too. We never really knew each other.
Yeah.
So when you invited me out to that,
you would have liked him. He would have annoyed the shit out of you. He would have. But no, his whole shtick was he's like, I'm gonna get the old gang back together. He was like Bukowski on a crazier level. But his whole thing, he kept saying, like, I'm going to get the whole gang back together. And unfortunately, it kind of took him, his passing. And since that time,
I never heard how he passed. What happened?
Just too much of this over the years. And it kind of messed with everything internally. And he was trying to quit. And his just body was just kind of done. So.
Yeah, I've lost several people to that. Yeah.
So
that's why I started slowing down.
Yeah, no, honestly, being in the military this last 22 years has kept me out of a lot of trouble, and I probably would have gotten involved in some shit that I shouldn't have.
Opening up my first business, my studio, you know, that's what really influenced me to start getting healthier. You know, I started feeling lethargic and lazy, and I was like, I can't operate a business if I'm feeling like a slug.
Right.
You know, so I got to do something about it. And it took a little while, you know, to start slowing down. But, you know, when you find a reason to motivate yourself and, you know, discipline yourself and stick with it, you know, it just kind of becomes a lifestyle. You know, it's interesting. And who would have thought all these years later that I'd become a health?
Yeah, no, I would not have, like, pictured
a health coach.
You know? But that's cool.
But it's interesting when I was looking at, like, what do I want to do next, especially in the middle of the pandemic. I was like, you know, what else am I really stoked on? I was like, you know, I'm really into fitness. So originally I wanted to be a fitness trainer. And then
She also did beer too. Like,
that's true.
Your own beer before you even started coming to our
we
club
came up with the idea with our beer. So for those that don't know, the band I sing in Authentic Sellout has our own branded beer called American Dream, which is based off one of our songs. And it's done by a brewery called Division 23 Brewing. Their head brewer, Eric Stubbs, and I go way back to high school.
Also a prospect in the El Rey Beer Club.
That's right. I helped bring him in. And they were doing he graduated in 1999, so a year after me. So they were doing a 20-year reunion party for their class. I missed mine the year before.
You didn't miss much, man. Those things suck.
Yeah, true. But it's good to see, you know, old classmates, and I loved my classmates from high school. You know, I never thought I'd say that all these years later. Some people trip out. They're like, "Really? You're still tight with people from high school?" But yeah, I went to the School of Creative and Performing Arts, and you know, most people know it as SCPA, and it was great, and that's how I knew Eric. And when I went there, we started talking, and you know, I was like, that's so cool that you're doing this. I wish I would have known. And I mentioned something about how we had tried to pursue getting our own beer made.
Right.
And then he didn't even hesitate. He's like, why don't I just do it for you? And then a couple weeks later, we're in a pandemic, and we had to put a plug in the whole, you know, beer idea until fall of 2021. And that's when we got it launched. You
guys did a pale ale, right?
We did it's like a San Diego Pale Ale. It's very similar to like the Tony Gwynn beer, the 394. But we made ours a little more citrusy tasting, lighter, refreshing. Because I want people to be able to drink more than just one or two of them.
Yeah.
I didn't want something too filling. But I also, my quest was to have something that's universally taste-worthy, so anyone can really appreciate it, even if you don't like drinking beer. Which I will say, several people that don't really drink beer have tried one at our shows and have commented on, if I was a beer drinker, I would be drinking a shitload of this. So, exactly.
Cheers.
Cheers to that. And it's now, you know, being a part of the beer club and being able to incorporate Eric in there too is really cool. So
he's been a great addition. He's been real helpful. Like he provided a one of those sixtels, like the smaller kegs for upcoming party, and he's got his side gig where he's doing keg cleaning, and he's hooked us up with that as well. So he's you know.
And the sixtels are great. You know, tips for like if you're launching a beer and you want to introduce it into a bar, music venue, restaurant, whatever. Start with a sixtel because the sixtel's small, has like
3.2 gallons, something like that.
Yeah, something like that, and that's like what, like maybe 50, 60 pours, something like that, and it's a good way to test the market to see if people like the beer, and we still stick with them. I mean,
yeah,
you know,
it's much more mobile than a full-on keg as well.
Yeah. I tried a keg once for when we did our annual toy drive for the band, and
it's hard to drink a full keg's worth of beer.
There was a lot of beer left afterwards.
Yeah, like,
so
even when you got drinkers, you're like, drink up, guys, please.
It's all day matinee show from like 1 to 7, so I figured, okay, that's a good length of time, and proceeds from the beer sales that day went to the toy drive too, which was cool.
That's nice.
Yeah, so
yeah, we're a nonprofit, but we're a social club, so it's different. It's a 501c7 instead of 3. So like, yes, we get money from like our members with dues and event fees, but we don't give it to charity. It goes back into funding the club so that we can continue to hang out and make and drink beer. So
I'm having a good time.
It's like a circle, right?
I love it, dude. You put a great social circle together. Everyone that's involved is friendly, fun to be around, and you know. My motto for this show, for example, is everyone's got a story to tell. So it's interesting learning about the people that I don't know there, or just even learning more about people like Robbie that, you know, I'm just catching up with after all this.
He's at Sony now, right?
Yeah. He's been there for a long time.
Yeah.
So, you know, it's interesting.
Like a big wig.
We were talking about all the different musicians that, you know, that work there and whatnot. A lot of the guys from Agent 51, like Chris Arms and Eric Davis, they all work there. And you know, at one point I almost thought about getting a job there, but I was so like involved in the music industry back then. I was like, this is what I want to do the rest of my life.
Yeah.
So.
I turned a wrench for like 15 years for the military. I did it on the outside as well, and then I moved over. Wanted to do something a little more marketable and sexy and get myself lined up on the outside. So I moved into IT. Did that for a few years. Realized I fucking hated it. And so I've been in project management for 3 years or so now.
Okay.
Through military, some IT, some facilities.
So, let's go back to that for a second. So Kill Me Kate's on its way out. What made you decide you wanted to end that band?
You know, we did a tour. We call them tours, but shit, we just went up to like the Bay Area and back.
Weekend run or whatever, yeah.
Yeah, but at that time when you're like 20, 21.
It's still considered a tour.
That's for us. You right out of high school. That was a tour. That's what we did. We were stoked to play places like Gilman and whatnot. And we got back. We played our last show at what is now Till 2. It was called like the Revolver or some shit like that.
The Playhouse. Back in the
it was called the Playhouse for state as well.
And then it became it was the Playhouse, and then what was it afterwards? It was like
I think it was
before Chain bought it, and it was called like the Beauty Bar.
Oh yeah, I know the owners. I went to like junior college with them. I actually worked I was a fill-in door guy throughout San Francisco. I worked door off two and the tower and things like that as well. So, but yeah, we got back from that tour and just shit going on in my life, and a lot of stuff had been on hold. You know, you're in a band and you're doing all this stuff, and for me, like later on when I got back into it with like Heartful Hearts, it got to a point where it's like, hey, I'm like 30 something now, and I'm putting on like doing the adult things in my life for you know. And as soon as I left music again, I mean, I went to grad school. I got my master's, I got my doctorate, I got a real job, I bought a house, I got married, I had a kid. I did all this crazy shit in like the span of like 3 years, man. So
that's right.
4 years, and my son's 8 now, and I wouldn't change anything. I do miss being on stage, but Kill Me Kate, it was time. There's a lot of shit going on.
And what year was that? That was 2000?
2000, I think. Yeah. Like less than a year later is when I swore in, and then you know we were at war, and actually I ended up in Iraq in 2004, and
So have you actually been in combat? Is that what you're saying?
Well, I was a mechanic. I was at Balad, Iraq. So in 2004. No, I didn't have to shoot anybody or get shot at, but yeah, they were throwing mortars at you every single day, and not a fun place to be and work and things like that. So.
And what motivated you to join? And why that?
I wanted money to go to big boy school. I was in junior college when I was doing Kill Me Kate for part of the time, and I wanted to finish my bachelor's. So and I had some friends that were enlisted, and I think they call it the Fuck Your Buddy program. Like, hey, this is great. You can get this paid for. Like, okay. So for me, it was supposed to be like a couple-year gig to go ahead and fund college, which it did. But I mean, 22 years later, I'm still doing this shit. So. Yeah. But
and what made you pick the division that you're in?
Well, it's I don't want to get into specifics because I'm still in, and I don't like mixing the two things.
Sure.
But there was a unit locally here, and it just made sense.
So, okay.
And been there.
Like became a lifetime career for you. Look at that.
Yeah, I guess. Yeah, 22 years. Yeah. So, but. Writing is probably, so we've talked about, for the most part, we've talked about art, we've talked about beer, a little bit about the military,
so let's get into what inspired you to become an author.
Well, I've always, before music, like even when I was doing art as a little kid, I was always writing short stories and things like that. And I started writing like vignettes about shit that me and my friends did. Like I was doing that in high school. And then I started writing essentially novels that were like quilt work where I was piecing all these together, and it was more or less about my life, like bars, bad jobs, and worse women. Essentially, is how I referred to it, and so I kind of changed some things around, and some names, this, that, and the other, because I didn't want to get sued. And
right.
But as far as publishing go, I've had more success with nonfiction. Like I have a chapbook, which is kind of like a collection of my short stories and poems that was put out like 15 years ago. But I've got 4 nonfiction titles. My first one came out right before I hit 40, and that was kind of a goal for me. I wanted to get a book published, not a vanity press, like not me like paying to have it out, like a publisher picked it up and put it out before I hit 40. And I had my first book signing for this one, my first book, for my 40th birthday. So it came out just short. So I'm big on setting goals and actually making them.
And these are based on your lineage right here.
Yeah. So I got 4 books, and they all really started out from interviews of me just talking to people about my great grandparents and the things that they were involved in, and you're gathering these stories, and then you're doing like research where you're finding the primary resources. You're getting census records, you're getting birth records, you're getting. I got to the point where I was requesting FBI files through eFOIA requests like that, and eventually you're writing these different chapters. They expand so much, you get so much information, they breathe life, and a chapter becomes its own book. Mm-hmm. So I've written like 14 books, man. 4 of them are out. 90% of it is all nonfiction. I'm working on right now a memoir that looks at my time kind of adjusting to life after I returned from Iraq, and kind of the difficulties I had adjusting with that. And it's called Pipe Wrench.
I like that title.
I got back from Iraq, and I left on my 27th birthday.
Oh, wow.
I left on my birthday, and I got home, and I didn't have a job, because I was in the reserves. And a buddy of mine who was a royal fuck-up didn't have a job, and he's like, I want to work outside with my hands. We should look for a job together. And I'm like, man, you're a fuck-up, but whatever. Sure, let's go find a job outside with our hands. And we ended up had a buddy named Alan who was a plumber, and so like, oh yeah, we know Alan, let's go apply there, and like he'll vouch for us. I'm like, well, he'll vouch for me. But it ended up we both got the interview, like, oh, you guys are veterans, oh, you just got back from the war, yeah, sure. Then it came time to piss in a cup, and then my friend, he didn't make the cut. So now I'm a fucking plumber, because my friend wanted to work outside with his hands. Yeah. So the book, it's kind of comedy, kind of coping, that kind of a thing. I just finished a revision of it recently, so hopefully that one will come out at some point. That one's about my life, so it's a little different than writing about others, but it's
cool.
It's very much like John Fonte or Charles Bukowski. So you have an alter ego, like I'm J. Michael Niotta, but Michael Francesco Davignetti is my alter ego. So I write these fictional stories about this character, when really it's my life and that's me. And so with this one, it was like book 3 in that series that I wrote, and I decided to do it as nonfiction. And I used a lot of my journal entries from before the deployment, when I was deployed in Iraq, and then when I got back. And so it's some dark shit and some funny shit. You know, it's like Bukowski's book, Post Office. The first line is, "It began as a mistake." You know, it kind of just chronicles like his whole, how he ended up working for the post office for like 20 years. And this is like how I ended up working. I'm joining the military for 22 years, you know, so hopefully that'll come out soon. Like I said, I've written like 14 books. I have 4 of them out. My newest one came out, I got all 4 of them here. This one came out a year ago, like yesterday. It's a pleasure, and this looks at the floating casino industry in Southern California. And it is family history, because my great-grandfather owned 2 of the earliest water gamblers that we had out here, the Monfalcone and the Rose Isle. So I've done with the books, like I've done lecturing like at the Mob Museum. I've done lecturing for clubs like the Adventurers Club of Los Angeles, for the Order of Sons and Daughters of Italy and America, and done some TV spots, documentaries, docuseries, that kind of thing.
Oh, really?
So,
You've done TV spots.
Yeah. I've been on Nat Geo, the Travel Channel, Disney Plus. I'm on Amazon right now with a new one on narcotics and the mafia called Dope Men. I got a small little snippet in that first episode, and I'll be out a little later in volume 2. Seth Ferranti, he's the one that did that project. He had White Boy, was a big one that he had, documentary. Well, it was a documentary. There was a movie.
Before the movie. Well, that's all based on a true story. Yeah.
Right. So that one's out, and then I'm working with Creative Chaos VMG right now. I was up in Boyle Heights about a year ago filming with them for Mafia Spies, which is going to be out on Paramount Plus early next year, and that looks at the book by the same name, and they brought me in as a SME to talk about Handsome Johnny Roselli, who was essentially involved in the CIA plot to kill Fidel Castro.
Oh, wow.
And he was a mafia guy, right? And he was with the Chicago outfit for many years, but they brought me in as a SME to talk about his earlier days, because he was a soldier in the local mafia in Southern California, and he worked for my great-grandfather for a quarter century. Wow. So with that, it was a lot of fun. I went in there and went up in Boyle Heights in this cool studio. God, what's the name of that studio? They've recorded like Rancid and some other really cool bands. I'll get back to you with the name of the studio. But I went in there, and I go on camera and I'm talking this, that, and the other, and the guy, Tom and Elan, they're great, the producer and the director, and it's their kind of gig. And they're tied in with like Hulu and Netflix and MTV and all these platforms. And then Tom's like, I really like your voice. Would you like to do some voiceover stuff, some narration for the show? Because it's like a six episode thing. I'm like,
really?
I'm like, yeah, sure. Why? Because I sound like Joe Pesci. He's like, yeah. So usually when I'm on doing all these like TV spots and documentaries and stuff, like I'm not really acting, because I'm just being myself like I am right now, just talking about history and my life and my relatives' lives and things like that. But with this, I was like, no, I'm gangster number 3. FBI agent 2, and so myself and then Robert Davi, who's been in like a million fucking movies. Yeah, we're the 2 voices that are going to be on that Mafia Spies, supposed to come out the first quarter on Paramount Plus. Yeah. This next year,
so I can check that out.
Yeah, I've been chatting with them. I got another meeting with them next week. We're going to be talking about potentially this new show they want to work out with me. I think they're like, that's the guy. They want to do like a kind of like a mob myth dispel, mythbuster kind of thing. Cool. And so I've been talking to them about putting together a show. They want me to host it. So hopefully that sees fruition. That would be really cool to do, because it's what I do in my books anyway.
Maybe become quite the historian when it comes to your family.
Yeah, so I mean, if you want to know about like organized crime on the West Coast, this is Los Angeles Underworld. It's a pictorial, and I think we broke the record. It's like 180 images, original images, and I think we broke the record for having the most amount of actual like content words in these books, because it's usually just captions.
Yeah.
But if you want to know like about every single mafia boss on the West Coast, a picture of them, their bio, other organizations that were around, and things like that, then that would be this book, my pictorial I did with my buddy Avi Bash, who's a curator. And then the other book, this is my second book, kind of a departure from like organized crime. This is The Fight Abroad and the Fear Back Home, and it looks at the Italian-American contribution during World War II, land, air, sea, and on the home front. And it's really two books in one, because the other book looks at the treatment of their families stateside on like West Coast during this, because we all know the Japanese story, what happened to them, right? They were enemy aliens, but a lot of people don't know that the Italians and Germans were enemy aliens too. So this tells their story. It goes through the lens looking at forced you had travel restrictions, curfew restrictions. So I've lectured on that, like I said, for Order of Sons and Daughters of Italy and America, and also the San Diego Library downtown, that big old dome-looking one. I was there talking for the Rebellious Misbreed program about this stuff here. This should be required reading for history, because it's like a forgotten piece of our past. Not forgotten, hidden piece of our past.
And is it your family that inspired this book?
So yeah, again, like I said, this all starts with interviews. So this is actually, this handsome fellow right here is 99 years old now. It's my great uncle, Anthony Amador.
Impressive.
Yeah, he lives out in Las Vegas. He just had another birthday. He was there for the Japanese surrender. I worked with another gentleman named Richard Williams Dick. He's passed a couple years ago. He was a left waist gunner on a B-17.
Wow.
And so it was great to actually hear their stories, put out a tangible product, and then send them a copy and say, here, this is your story, man. And then to have someone in their 90s to like hold it and just be like, wow, like there's no other feeling. It's amazing. Yeah, I was sad that he left, and I'm really happy that my Uncle Anthony's still around and we got to finish the book, in time. So this is kind of like my contribution to my people, so to speak. So,
right, that's rad. Well, I'm proud of you. I mean,
thank you.
You've done quite a lot since I've known you, and I mean we both have, but I haven't put out a book or anything yet. Actually, I am writing a book. It's called The Dating Guide for Musicians. The Struggle is Real, and it's a self-memoir / self-help book for guys like me that are just struggling to like maintain a relationship, and especially one that'll stick.
Right.
I mean, how it is being a musician. It's tough. One thing that I definitely have encountered a lot is a lot of people just be like, oh, you're the little boy toy cute musician, I can't take you seriously, or I don't like to do like control. I remember I went out with one girl, and dual birthday parties with my ex-business partner way before we became business partners, because we had birthdays like a week and a half apart from each other. And she's like, I'll only come out if you give me all your undivided attention. I was like, well, what about my friend? She's like, she was being so selfish in that moment, and that right there is just a good prime example of bye, Felicia. Like, I'm not going to deal with that. And my life expectancy for a relationship was like maybe 6 to 8 months if I was lucky. And I mean, there's some I put in the book that I'm reflecting on the past, like coulda, shoulda, woulda, like looking back, and I like a little excitement. I like a woman that's going to kick me in the ass at the same time. And I talk a lot about my last relationship too, because I learned so much from that.
Right.
And I taught her that exes can be friends, and we're still like best friends.
You might want to consider getting a pseudonym, or like changing your name in there and calling it fiction. Like,
I'm not,
avoid the lawsuits.
I'm not using any actual names. I'm just using a reference. It's to a point.
Fair enough, man.
Yeah, I've had that advice passed on to me quite a bit, but I'm excited to eventually finish it. You know, I just started writing it finally this year. It's an idea I've had that was inspired by one of my friends. A handful of years ago, there was an author that got popped writing this. He put out a book that was very similar to this idea that I have.
Right.
And it was a best-selling book, and then he got popped for fabricating 80% of his story. And my buddy was in my car, and you know, we were sitting there talking, and I forget where we were going, but we had, you know, enough time to have a lengthy conversation, and he was asking me why I had broken up with the current girl I was dating, because I just gone through that breakup at that time. This is probably like 2016. And he starts laughing. He's like, you know, that reminds me of a book I just read. And he's like, but the author got popped for fabricating most of his stories. But with you, like, I'd rather read your book because you have nothing to fabricate. Those are all like real life incidents.
Well, you know, honestly, like I've become like kind of a SME on the West Coast for mostly organized crime activities, and there are books and movies and TV shows out there, and I would say that 90%, if not more, of what you'll encounter in the library, online, on TV, the big screen, whatsoever, is more myth than fact. So my shtick has been like shooting holes in all these bestsellers by using actual no shit research.
Right.
You know, using like the federal files, using like census, birth, you know, records, travel documents, Department of Transit, things like that. So documents actually tell a story, and they can refute a lot of these things. Like the older books that you'll see, they don't have reference and sections at all. It's like, where are they getting this information? Chances are some of it they are fabricating it. They're looking to get a bestseller. And for me, and I think with the whole thing with that show premise that hopefully it goes through with Creative Chaos, is like they want me to like shoot holes in this, and kind of that's been my mission with writing, at least with the nonfiction end of things, when I'm not writing about my life, has been to kind of shine a light on things and to put things, the past, into perspective and correct some of the errors. Because there's been a lot of negative things out there about my great-grandfather, Jack Dragna. He was the head of the local mafia here in Southern California from 1931 to 1956. So his associates were like...
That's a long stint.
Yes.
And when you say Southern California, like the whole region of Southern California?
So in California is very different than, say, the East Coast, where you had 5 families and 5 boroughs.
In different districts and all that, yeah.
Yeah, so in California, like, the territory for the Southern California family, it's called the LA family, was larger than probably all of New York. Essentially, it was 7 counties. So you from the border in Tijuana up to Santa Barbara, from the coast into southern Nevada. So very different, because it was very sprawled out versus compact in New York. So you had 2 cities or 2 families up in Northern California, the San Jose and the San Francisco crime families, and then you had the Los Angeles Brigade, and that came together in the early 20s, and my great-grandfather was involved in that organization for 40 years, essentially, almost 40 years, and he was a leading force for most of that time. So individuals like Mickey Cohen were kind of a gopher, and then they had a gopher for him when he was partnered with Ben Siegel, Bugsy, for establishing the West Coast Wire. A lot of the relationships that you find online and in the movies and in a lot of the books too, they have it completely backwards. They have things wrong. So that's been my mission, to kind of clear things up. But not only that, but you know, not to put like rose-colored lens on anything, but to put things into perspective. You have to look at relationships locally with law enforcement, politicians, other criminal organizations, and then internationally, and then, you know, and put together a timeline of what was going on with legislature, you know, things like prohibition, you know, when they were attacking an industry on in Southern California. California in a whole, like, California produced something like 85% of the nation's wine grapes prior to Prohibition. And what they were putting out, the vintners, the Italian grapemen, was a largely Italian industry, was on par with anything that you would find over in Europe. And now here you have this moral law, prohibition, that's coming into effect, and it's an amendment instead of a law, because the President of the United States said this is a bad idea. So they circumvent him, kind of bitch slap our own president and say, we're doing this, Congress and Senate. And so it's a moral law. And essentially they're saying, like, what you're doing is wrong, your culture is bad, like wine is bad. So you have to look at it past from the different perspectives and put it into context, rather than, this was a law and these people were breaking the law. It's like, well, it wasn't a very good idea to outlaw alcohol in the first place.
That was the dumbest thing
I'll drink to that.
we could have done.
Right?
Oh, man. Cheers.
Salud. So yeah, that's kind of what I do with my writing and my lectures. I've done a couple videos. I got a YouTube page. I don't do a whole lot with that. It kind of divided with my time. I work full time. I've got the National Guard. I'm a husband. I'm a father. The beer club, organizing all of that. We brew 3 times a year, and then we come back to either bottle or can it, and then we have our end of year party where we have our induction ceremony for new prospects. Mm-hmm. So I'm rooting for you, man. I think you're going to make it in. So I'm a pretty busy dude,
And if I don't, I'm going to storm out there and then make a big scene.
Fuck this place.
Fuck this place and fuck you.
I'm the real king, Sulo King.
I'm that damn El Rey.
I even got a throne on my porch.
That's damn right.
You should bring that in. We just sit in that from now on. You got to get a second one for your guest.
Well, that's why I haven't used it yet. I almost did for one episode, but I didn't like how the episode came out because he was sitting in a funky little chair. So
sure, everyone's sitting in your lap.
Not Santa Claus over here.
Ho ho ho!
Only during December I turn into Sulo Claus. But that's a story for another time.
Yes. Let's not get into that.
Yeah. Anyway, we've covered so much since we've been sitting down here talking. I urge all of you guys to check out his books. I'm gonna post links to everything, so you can follow him on social media. Links to where you can purchase his books. Do you sell your art?
I've done some commission pieces, and I've sold some stuff online or at art shows. Not a whole lot. I don't do that. I don't do art for money,
you do
really.
more just for fun.
It keeps me fucking sane, man.
Yeah.
Playing music, writing, things like that has really been a coping mechanism for me, so I don't thump holes in walls, that kind of thing. So
yeah, no, I hear you. Everyone's got to have their creative outlet or some kind of outlet, period.
Yeah.
For some people, it's the gym. The gym helps keep me partially sane.
I'm in the gym 5 days a week. I gotta
Before
do that
it used to be music and writing and all that, and that wasn't...
I was working on my motorcycle this morning before I came here. I got the old cars, gotta have something to just kind of keep you sane, man.
I hear you, man. I hear you. And that's all we can really do it. Some people struggle to find those things to have that kind of outlet, and those are the angriest, most fucked up people out there. But then again, some people are also a little off the rocker.
Yeah.
And chemical imbalances, whatever you want to fucking say it is. But
it makes for some great art sometimes. You should.
Yeah. Look at it. Any creative person out there, innovator, genius, whatever, has been deemed crazy. People have called me crazy. I don't give a fuck.
Like a fox.
I'm still gonna put my art out there. Mm-hmm. You know what I mean? And now my band's not as active as it used to be, so I'm working on a solo project.
Yeah, Sulo with solo.
Yeah, Sulo and solo. Which is actually
it's a mouthful with
a tribute to my friend that passed, a mentor who got me in the music industry in the first place, based off a voicemail he used. So the first song that I put out there in the end of the music video, there's a tribute to him and a clip from that voicemail I still have saved, where he's all, authentic sellout's cool, but I really want to hear solo and Sulo. Now, Sulo and solo. So finally, I decided it was time to do that, because it got to a point where I wasn't as busy with the band anymore, and it was I was kind of, as a musician, you grow over time.
Right.
Some people get pigeonholed and you just want to do the same thing for the rest of their life. Me, like, I'm, versatile. I listen to a little bit of everything, and I love rock music, and I wanted to do a project where I could just go through the different genres. If I want to do a rockabilly song, I'll do that. If I want to do an Americana song, I'll do that. If I want to do an industrial song, whatever, the list goes on, I'll do that. So that's kind of what this whole project is. It's all studio based. Maybe one day I'll put together a show when I have enough material. Right now I've only written one song or two songs, and then with this second song we're going to take it out to Sun Records and record out there and do a whole documentary based around it, like a probably 20-minute short film, enter in the film festival circuit, have some fun with it, you know what I mean, and do one original and then do probably an Elvis song. I'm going to do one 50s cover song just for shits and giggles, and to kind of pay tribute to, the legacy of being able to sit in the same room and record on some of the same equipment that's left over from that era that these greats, came in there with.
You're actually going to be in the studio recording?
In the studio, yeah. We're going to fly out to Sun Records. It's going to be an expensive trip. I got a few benefit shows to help fund some money for that.
Well worth it.
And a GoFundMe floating out there that I just started about a week ago.
Flash that on the bottom too.
Yeah. But it's a dream of mine, and Chris Arms is my co-songwriter in the project.
I love that fucker too.
He lived in Nashville for a while and told me about this. He's like, when we were recording the first song, you can record at Sun Studio. How cool would that be if, we did that with the next song? And I was like, oh yeah, I wish. He's like, no, it's not just a museum. Like, you can actually book time after tour hours.
Fucking awesome.
So from 7 o'clock on until they open the next morning.
That's better than some Jeff Forrest double time shit right there.
Oh no! Hey, Jeff Forrest is a legend. He's done all the greats too. But Sun Studio for me personally, I'm a big Elvis fan. 50s is my favorite era for rock and roll. I just love that whole era period.
Yeah.
Everything about it.
I used to rock the pompadour, and then time caught up with me. So, yeah.
Luckily, I still have hair on my head. And I'm gonna appreciate it for as long as that lasts.
Enjoy it, man. Enjoy it. Yeah. Honestly, like I've been with my wife. Like we've been together 10 years now, and like I've showed her some like. I was kind of done with music by then, and I showed her some of these old pictures. Like, I used to play music and this, that, and the other. And I showed her, she's like, she didn't even like. She's like, I don't like you with hair. I'm like, well, that's probably good, baby, because it's not coming back. So.
I thought you looked fine with hair. I'm surprised that she didn't like you with hair.
I don't know. I think she liked the tattooed bald guy look.
Maybe.
I figure as long as like Vin Diesel and that Statham dude are making the movies, I'm good to go.
Each his own.
Yeah.
Each his own. Yeah. Jason Statham.
The transporter.
Yeah. I do love his one-liners. I got to throw that out there real quick.
He'll never surpass Arnold, though. Yeah. Let off some steam, Bennett.
Yeah. Stick around. From
Get to
Predator.
the chopper.
So back.
You said you were gonna kill me, Les. That's right.
They used to have the little apps where you could download different actors and sound clips from their movies to just play.
Ooh,
I used to drive people crazy with Arnold Schwarzenegger.
That's the thing about like our generation, man. That's the thing that's like about we're like the very tail end of Gen X, like the Zennials, whatever you want to call them, and like we speak in fucking movies, movie quotes and music lines, like that is us. That like defines us so hardcore.
Yeah, it's just it's a weird era that we're in now, and it's honestly kind of scary. I kind of worry about the generation we're going in with, how technology is so advanced. It's interesting. I was actually, during Comic-Con, James Cameron was interviewed.
Right.
And he's such an advocate about like this scary thing with AI that he predicted way back then. And when I first saw that as a kid, I was like, well, you know what? This isn't just sci-fi. This could come true.
Yeah.
In 2008, I read an article that I saw posted in the news, and at the endoskeleton, and so the Judgment Day is already upon us. And I was like, well, what? And it was about a military artificial cannon operation that went haywire and turned on the operator and blew him to smithereens. And it was talking about, like how AI can be deadly, and we got to be very careful if we're going to use it for weapons of mass destruction.
I'd give you insight about that, but I got the clearance and everything. And, it's classified.
I can imagine, but still to this day, James Cameron coming on and talking about how he's still worried about AI getting in the wrong hands, or if we get it too advanced, it could
1984.
turn. All that Terminator shit could be, Judgment Day could literally become a reality.
Yeah, they're going to be replacing us on like SoundCloud and all those different platforms now making music.
Well, the era of a DJ, is just I was telling Tim Piles that I was like, you know what, you may not be a DJ for 91X anymore, but come on, man, like you're the voice of San Diego.
94.9, right?
You don't need to do it. He was at 91X, 94.9, back to 91X, and
the local pilot.
But I was like, you are beyond just radio. I was like, radio.
Yeah, he's doing the sticker thing now too.
The guy is a man of
him, and I've been trying to get him and Sharon, his wife, over to the fucking Citizen to brew with us. You need to talk to him.
I will.
They would have such an awesome time. Bring him out for the our next brew session is the date night couples brewing. So I think
I'll see if he can drag Sharon out, but I will definitely work on getting him out to one of those sessions.
And what lucky lady are you going to bring?
I don't know. Rent a date of the week.
Okay. Mail order bride? You don't need to marry her for this thing, man. It can just be a date night.
We'll see. Maybe I'll just pop on Hinge and find the first, or put a post out on social media and find the first one.
Would you like to win an illustrious date with...
What was that movie? Win a Date with
King?
Tad Hamilton. Win a Date with Sulo King.
Shit.
Now, the first person to comment on how good looking I am, you will win a date to the brewing session.
Yeah, when you said, well, how do you want to do this thing? You want to do it over like a phone call or something? I'm like, man, we're sexy beasts. We need to actually be on camera.
Well, I can cater to people's needs if they're busy. So I do this through Zoom. I do this through video now.
Yeah.
I do this. It started audio based. I have some podcast mics, and my laptop. I do it through that. I've even done it using this, like Tim Piles' interview. I interviewed him on the way up to Disneyland in my car. Mm-hmm. So I try to have different settings. And in the most, fun and interesting guests I can think of. And a lot of them happen to be people I already know.
When I did Drain the Oceans, sorry to interrupt.
No.
When I did Drain the Oceans, I went up to LA and I filmed, and they brought me on a boat out there, and they had divers and went underneath to look at my great-grandfather's, the remains of his gambling ship, right? And I was up there for like 3 days filming, and then I got sent on that deployment up to Germany for 6 months, and they're like, well, we want you to do some voiceovers. I'm like, well, I'm in fucking Germany. So they mailed me a mic, so I ended up doing some of that stuff out there. So yeah.
They let you keep the mic too?
No, but I ended up buying the exact same one, and I've used it.
What kind of mic was it?
Oh, I don't know. I'm not a tech guy. Like I said, I tried IT, and I'm like,
not for you.
Project management is where I'm good to go. My brain's all over the fucking place, so it just makes sense. So,
I hear you. That's what I loved about event planning.
Yeah.
My brain's kind of the same way all over the place.
Capitalizing on our ADHD, right?
Seriously.
For sure.
Yeah.
But no, I like what you've done with the show, and with this whole COVID pandemic crap, it's kind of really, even with my son with school, he was weird, he's doing all this stuff on the computer, and they visited me when I was in Germany for about a month, and with the time change, it's right before bed, and he's in front of his computer doing his classroom work. It was so weird, kind of a funny thing where we're at, where these kids now, where that's the norm. For me, I remember having a fucking pager. I remember getting a cell phone. I remember all that.
I remember
Oregon Trail, when the computers were first brought into fucking
Oregon
school.
Trail. Yep. On the Apple computers.
Apple IIe.
Where in the world is Carmen Sandiego?
I don't remember that.
That was a fun one.
I just remember Oregon Trail, man. I
Oregon Trail
died of like a snake
classic.
bite or some shit.
And I remember when Tetris came out, it was over for me after that.
I had a Game Boy.
Game Boy?
For sure.
Oh, yeah.
Dr. Mario.
Yeah. Yeah, that's right, man. Yeah. The old days. You know? And, you know, it's interesting now, like, the era of arcade games is dying. I mean, you have to go to like places like Dave and Buster's.
Yeah.
Although I will say the barcade industry came back, and that became a very popular thing. You know, putting what they call now retro arcade games in.
Well, they got those tiny little like Nintendos. I remember getting one of those when they were new in the '80s. They have those now, like smaller version. It's got like 100 games on them and shit.
Yeah.
My son's like playing shit that I played in like 1984 and shit. So it's pretty
10
crazy.
years ago, I took when the PlayStation Portable came out. That that was like the new version of like the Game Gear, the Atari Lynx. I thought it was like the coolest thing ever, and you had little discs that you put in now. Yeah, it was just like the disc drives that they would have on Xbox and PlayStation.
You didn't need to blow on the cartridge or anything.
Yeah.
Or double it up, put the
Like
other cartridge or push it down. Yeah, like
they even reissued Nintendos. but yeah, this friend of mine figured out how to mod the PSPs, and you could download all the content into it.
Okay.
So I still have my PSP, and it's loaded with emulators for Nintendo, Super Nintendo, Sega Genesis, and I think another gaming system, something along those lines. But it's even got like the rare import games that we really didn't get out here, like the Japan-made ones and whatnot.
I was always about Street Fighter 2 and Mortal Kombat. Like,
Mortal
when
Kombat.
I was in that whole,
Actually,
not a gamer anymore.
A Mortal Kombat 4 arcade machine. It's at my buddy's house right now, but I had it at Brick by Brick near the tail end when I was there. And then I refurbished it and had it at my studio, and would just put it on free play for my clients or their kids to play, especially when I had my annual parties there every year. I'd turn that thing on, and people would just be glued to it.
Yeah. My son's got like the Switch, and we play Smash Brothers.
Smash Brothers.
I'm always Wario,
There you go. It's crazy how the whole Mario world is still
there, yeah.
Still relevant and thriving. I mean, they just had the Super Mario movie.
Yeah, we went and checked it out.
Yeah, it's crazy. So it's great to see how our childhood, certain things from the, when we grew up even is.
I'm just sick of all the fucking remakes, though, man. The prequels sometimes are all right, but rarely is there ever a remake. Other like Dawn of the Dead, that was a good remake. Every once in a while there's a good remake, but for the most part,
shout out to my boy Ken Forey from the original Dawn of the Dead. I agree 100%. Like I was just talking to my buddy this morning about. I was like, they made some article popped up on my phone. And I was like, they made a remake to Doogie Howser on Disney Plus that ran for 2 seasons.
Why?
I never even heard about it, and it got
only thing I liked him
canceled. Thankfully,
the only thing I liked him in was he was like the scientist or whatever in what's that bug movie?
Oh, Starship.
Troopers. Starship Troopers. That's the only thing
NPH. I liked him in Harold and Kumar Go to Work.
Oh,
those films.
That one as well. I forgot about that.
He was classic in that. That's when. Actually, you know what's funny is I just watched about 6 months ago. Neil Patrick Harris had a movie that's based around like trying to get a Nintendo for Christmas.
Okay.
It is classic. He's like telling his son this whole story about it. It's like called 8-Bit Christmas.
Okay.
I think that's the name of that.
Is it kind of like The Wiz, The Wizard?
And he like narrates the whole story and has like shots of him. It's kind of like it's just kind of like a Christmas story.
Yeah. You'll shoot your eye out, right? For sure.
Yeah.
Red Ryder BB gun?
In fact, I was pretty impressed with the straight sequel to that came out.
That wasn't the first sequel. They had another one called like
2.
All in the Family or something.
But with the original, Peter Billingsley, the original Ralphie. Yeah. And it's interesting, at the end of that film, it goes into the segment from the first film when you're like, oh my God, okay, so he's telling the story.
Right.
And it all ties into each other. So
it was nice they brought everyone back and you had closure. Kind of like with coming to America. I mean, the next movie wasn't all that great or anything, but it was cool that they brought everyone that they could back.
Yeah,
it was still alive.
I mean, you can't put lightning in a bottle and have it strike twice like that. But it was good to see that. And Eddie Murphy, you know, he did that Dolomite film, which was great, and he's starting to make a little bit of a comeback.
So the filming in that Dolomite movie, that was in the Dunbar Hotel, right? It was this famous black-only hotel, the first like luxurious one. And next door was a 2-story structure called the Club Alabama. It was the Apex nightclub before that. So it opened in like 32 as the Club Alabama. And a few months in, my great-grandmother's older and younger brother bought it, and they managed it, and another owner behind the scenes was my great-grandfather, Jack Dragnet.
Okay.
So we owned it for much of the 1930s. And so the actual Dolomite movies, where you got Queen Bee's Club, where they're in there and the kung fu fighting stuff, that was the old Club Alabama that my family owned.
Oh wow, what a trip!
I went down there recently when I filmed up in Boyle Heights. I went by and I did some videos and checking it out, and I was really bummed because although they turned the Dunbar Hotel into this historic like building, when I think they have residents and stuff there, they knocked down the 2-story Club Alabama, and it is gone.
Oh no!
So, yeah, my great aunt, so my great uncle, him and his brother, right? They managed the place, brought in the acts in the 1930s, and his wife, she actually worked upstairs in the 2nd story, and it was a supper club. It was like an after hours. She was one of the cooks there. It was an after hours thing. You know, Prohibition was still on at first, and then after it dropped, they didn't have a liquor license. So it was a place where you can go after all the other places closed, get food and gamble and like all the greats. What was cool about that place is all these great musicians, right, would play for all these white audiences throughout Los Angeles when they were on their tour. But they couldn't stay in that area. They had to go to the Dunbar, which used to be called the Somerville. And they'd get checked in, and then afterwards they got situated. They'd come downstairs, and they'd go next door to the Club Alabama just to relax. Right. And they have a house band. And then all the greats would just be like, fuck it. And get up on stage and just do a couple numbers. So, yeah.
What a trip, man.
All of the jazz and blues greats that you can think of played there. You ever see that movie Ray?
Yeah, of course.
That's one of the backdrops they have, is him playing on that stage there.
You've become quite the family historian. I'm impressed.
Yeah. For the last 20 some odd years, I kind of found out about this stuff.
So did you start researching this on your own, talking to relatives?
When I was doing Kill Me Kate, right after I graduated from high school, a series of stories came out in the Reader, and this woman Judith Moore was working on a series with the daughter of Frank Bompensiero, and Frank Bompensiero was the capo regime, the captain of the local mafia here in San Diego, which was an extension of the Los Angeles family. So I said they were like, their territory was 7 counties. So he worked directly for my great grandfather. So these stories were coming out, and they were coming out in the Reader and playing in bands and going to shows. This was something that I picked up weekly, right? The Reader.
Everybody did before the internet was your way to see what's going on.
So my family, I think they were kind of like, oh shit, he's going to see some of the names, the relatives in there. So my stepmother pulled me aside into the garage one day and just kind of was like, hey, kind of said, like, well, your grandma's dad was involved in this. And that's what really started me into researching. So I read everything I could find, once you had the World Wide Web and all that kind of stuff, and then in the 90s, right in that era there, and just started gathering the documents, and then watched the movies, the TV shows, this, that, and the other, read all the books, saw the inconsistencies where it didn't line up, and so that really started me to find out the truth, and so it's been going on doing that for a quarter century almost. That's awesome. About as long as I've known you, I've been... I haven't really done anything outwardly with it until I finished my doctorate with grad school. And that's when I started publishing the books and putting a lot of the research and interviews and whatnot down into books and publishing them. So I'm doing the interviews and the TV spots and stuff.
Right.
So.
Right on.
Yeah.
That's interesting, that the mafia's presence here in San Diego. When I hang out at the Turf Club, I always feel like, like it's one of San Diego's oldest bars, and I've always heard these stories about how they used to hang out there.
Oh, could be. I mean, right across from the U.S. Grant, there's a whole new block there. Before they leveled that block, there was about 4 bars that were owned by the Matrangos. And then my Uncle Frank, he wasn't involved. He was a war hero, but his dad was the boss, and he had a bar called the Gold Rail. And Frank Bompensiero, who was the Capo regime in San Diego, was one of his business partners.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, he wasn't his name wasn't on.
His stepmother pulled you aside.
Yeah, my Uncle Frank, he passed just before I met my wife. He's,
oh, wow.
He's kind of like my second grandpa. He's a really cool guy, and but yeah, man, he served in World War II. He was just a very interesting character and lived that life out in L.A. where, he went to USC and to law school, and dated these movie star type girls and whatnot, and just kind of the sins of your father. He kind of had a hard luck story in life, and he dealt with a lot of crap from law enforcement and whatnot because of who his dad was, but when for the people who are involved in that way of life, a lot of them don't want that for their kids. They want that separation there, so they send them to like law school and they become doctors and things like that. They want a barrier there. They don't necessarily want them involved in that kind of way of life. And for me, like, I've been in the military the last 22 years, but I would say that if I was probably born, like earlier when all this shit was going on in the 30s and the 40s, I probably would have been involved because there was a lot of members in my family, like uncles and
what about your father?
No, my dad. So my dad and his dad, my grandfather, he was a war hero. He was a ball turret gunner in a B-17 during World War II. This is his bracelet right there. I wear that.
That's your grandfather?
Yeah, he was the first tech sergeant Niotta. I was the second. I'm a master sergeant now. In this book, I cover his story. That's the air, and the land is my Uncle Frank that I told you about. That's the land portion, the air and the land, and then the sea is my Uncle Anthony, who's still with us in Vegas. So land, air, and sea, about their stories and the contribution of Italian Americans. And so no, he wasn't involved in that way of life, but he owned a business. He was a treasurer. I think he might have held 2 offices for Maestro Music, which was a jukebox organization here that started in the 1950s. We were involved with it in the early 50s all the way into the 80s. Okay. And he was like the legitimate guy that ran the business, that put the hours in. But his business partners, they were members of the local brigade, the local mafia, and they didn't kick him out of the business or take it for the family, because it was gifted to him by his father-in-law, who was the former boss. So there was a line drawn there out of respect, and also because he took care of business. He was a legit face and handled things. So there's definitely been like a break from all of that, starting with my father's father. So he married the boss's daughter, but he was a straight shooter. Okay. So, yeah.
Interesting.
Yeah, some crazy history here in San Diego and Los Angeles and whatnot.
Yeah, I've always been kind of curious, mafia's presence here. I mean, you hear all the stories on the East Coast and whatnot. Yeah. And you don't hear the media really highlighting much about it out here.
And the Mob Museum pretty much told me that. I've lectured there for them 3 times. I was just there in October. I did
Is that the one in Vegas?
Las Vegas. Yeah. It's the #1 museum in all of Nevada, and it's an awesome place. It's 3 stories. I had my first book signing there for my first book. The basement they turned into a working distillery with a speakeasy. They have a jazz band, the whole like piano hinge paintings with hidden rooms. It's great. So I had my first book signing. I had a book signing for my first book there, right next to the actual stills. It was pretty cool. And I was there more recently in like October, lecturing on the gambling ship era. And whatnot. So. Yeah, if you haven't been there, man, you got to go check that place out. It's pretty cool.
One of these days, man.
Yeah, for sure.
It's on my list of places that I need to check out.
But there's plenty of history here in Southern California, here in San Diego as well. Not as much as Los Angeles, but sure, you had Frank Bompensiero, and then after after him, you had Tony Mirabile, who was the capo regime out here, and that guy owned something like 13 bars during the war years. It was obscene how many bars, and some of them are still around, I would say. Probably. A lot of them were downtown, but, you know, and then they had places in Tijuana as well, so.
Interesting.
Yeah.
Huh. Wow. That's fascinating, like your family's history and how much you've learned in the last, 20-something years I've known you.
Yeah,
That's cool, man. And now you put it all in the books, and
yeah,
And
I have relatives back east too. Like, it's great talking to people who are in their 90s and hearing their takes on things, and then running with that as for leads. But to hear like the personal end of things, like my great grandfather is usually depicted as like a villain. Obviously he's the head of a criminal organization.
Well, is there anything you have to be like content sensitive about?
In regards to
getting any kind of flack about it?
Well, I mean,
or threats or anything?
No. I know that with my grandmother and her brother, they were really reserved about me getting into this stuff initially, like probing around.
It's sensitive content.
Well, they were more concerned about the IRS coming around and bothering, the family and things like that. But for me, it was more of a quest because a lot of the information that was out there was not only incorrect, but it was very derogatory, saying that we were involved in things like narcotics and prostitution, and everything that I've encountered in my research showed the exact opposite. That they advocated against that, and even went back to New York to speak to the commission about the border at Tijuana being used for narcotics trafficking, and he was very against that. For him, this was a generational thing. Like his parents were involved, his grandparents were involved back in Corleone, were friends with people who were in the local Cosca and things like that. So to spoil the well, so to speak, by getting into narcotics and potentially having the future of your organization, nephews and sons and such being involved in narcotics, that was his concern. And so he didn't want his organization here on the West Coast to be involved in that at all. So there were concessions made where other families came into Tijuana and that area there from other states and other cities, and they handled that, and it was pushed into other areas like Central California to be dispersed because that wasn't his territory.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
Interesting.
Yeah, so the Dope Men that just came out, I talk a lot about narcotics and what I've just told you, and about prostitution and the darker vices and how the local mafia really wasn't involved in that. And I talk about some of the key players that were in this region here. But I think most of that content is going to come out in volume 2. I'm not sure when that's coming out. Yeah. So I got like 30 seconds clip or whatever, in this new episode. But it's really well done, and I'm looking forward to. They did some recreations with scenes and whatnot.
Cool.
Looking forward to that. So, got my IMDb page. I got like 6 or 7 different listings on there.
Nice.
I did another documentary on the murder of Ben Siegel, and that hopefully will be out by end of year or early next year. Not sure. They're looking for a platform on that. To bring it back to the art thing, that first piece I showed you was Ellie Short, or Elizabeth Short, The Black Dahlia. Well, there's books, fiction and not, like James Elroy, individuals like that, these noir writers and stuff, where they talk about it and they bring this whole element where Ben Siegel and Jack Dragna, my great grandfather, were involved somehow. So, and then the Gangster Squad in LA, because her body was found in Leimert Park, like a couple blocks from his house. So the Gangster Squad, the LAPD division assigned to organized crime, some of the guys actually showed up at his house and like knocked on his door to ask about it. He pretty much told him, "Get the fuck off my lawn," that kind of a thing. So that kind of intrigued me, and I've heard other stories about it and read some of the books, and it's humorous to think that the local mafia was involved in that, and that's probably what stirred me to get involved in doing art that surrounded that murder, and to do some of the horrific scenes that I've done with my artwork. So that's probably where that stems from.
Right.
It doesn't go back to like who my mother was or any kind of crap like that. Like it wasn't the babysitter's fault. Okay. So, but yeah.
Okay. Interesting. So what is next for J. Michael?
Right now, like, it's just really pushing with this beer club. Like I said, we incorporated as a social club in May of this year. We got our second end of year party coming up at the Tower. I'm just looking to grow that and groom maybe a sergeant at arms to kind of run things in case like I get deployed again or something like that. I want to build something that's going to be there after I'm gone, kind of a thing.
Okay.
Like a little bit of a legacy.
Build your legacy. I like that.
And I'm probably going to stay away from putting out books until I get some representation, man. Probably
agent?
do more, lit agent.
Yeah.
Because you get a raw deal, man. The royalties from some of these pub houses. I mean, you get beautiful products. I mean, it's made in America. 180 images, like thick paper, not hecho en chino.
No, that's quality.
None of that, but the royalties are kind of a joke. I make more money off buying the books wholesale and selling them off my website.
They have self-publishing deals through Amazon.
I haven't gone the vanity press route where I put it out myself. I really haven't done that. I want to steer clear of that. So I'll probably focus more on the TV spots and try and get in as writing as a SME, and hopefully that show will pick up. We can pitch it to a network, and I'll be hosting something or other. So.
There you go. And you mentioned you want to dive eventually back into music again.
Yeah, man, I've been kicking it around. I bring out my electric bass and my upright bass every now and again, and I slap it, and I talk to my buddy David. He's the treasurer in our club. He's got a band now called Crashing Forward, kind of embracing his old punk roots. He and I played together in Embalmers, and we were in the Conquistadors Car Club together years ago, and now he's my treasurer.
Oh, yeah, I noticed that in the back of your car.
Yeah, we were a hot item for a while. Everyone kind of got married and had kids and sold their cars, that kind of a thing. But he's back in it. He's playing he's back into music now. He's playing on Sunday for that soda bar gig that's going on with kind of like a 2-day festival.
Oh, yeah, it started today, like
Urethane, my buddy Chad from Skipjack, him and Steve Caballero.
I think it's what it's called.
Yeah.
Buckle 9's playing today.
Tilt Wheels on there today. I want to see them play, man.
Shout out to Davey Tilt.
Yeah, so I've kind of hit up David, like, hey, David, you want to play guitar in a band? And I'm a songwriter, I'm not a singer. I wish I was. If I'd been given blessed with that talent, I probably would never have left music. I would just kind of fronted my own band. Right. But I've also always just been kind of the coordinator and the songwriter and the band leader, but not the front man kind of a thing. So kicked around the idea with him, so maybe at some point, but I'm a family man. I've done European tours and Southwest tours. There's no way I can do that kind of thing. I have a son and a wife.
I don't have that kind of, if the opportunity presented itself and I was going to get paid to do it, maybe, I consider it, but that's one thing that we all...
I'd go on tour with Social D, as their bass player.
Yeah, that's one thing.
Sure.
Yeah, but, we're older, have different priorities now.
Yeah.
You guys are family men now. I don't really have much to lose. I could go out and still do it if I wanted to, but... Yeah, my buddy Chad with Urethane, right? He's got 2 kids, but they're a little older now. Yeah. He's a single guy again, so that fucker's been out in Europe, I don't know, a couple times already. Kind of just propelled. He just wanted to record Steve Caballero, and the next thing you know, they're like, oh, do you play bass? And he's like, yeah, I can play bass.
Yeah, oh, we need a bass player. And he's like, I know how to do that. He's a singer. I don't remember him ever playing an instrument in a band. He was always singing for Skipjack.
Yeah. So. And I started to get to know Chad a little better when he started bringing Skipjack back. And probably 2014, 2015, he would rehearse every once in a while at my studio. And then next thing you know, a couple years ago, he starts talking about Urethane. I see all these posts about it, and
good for
every
him,
time I go on a Guitar Center, he's like, check out my new Urethane shoes or Urethane socks, or check out the new bass.
Check out my new underwear.
Yeah. I'm like, dude, but he's living it up.
I'm happy for him.
Me too.
And he was one of the individuals I kind of connected with again after Sean passed. We all kind of met up, and he's part of that old crew from the '90s, man. And
love Chad. Shout out to Chad. And I'm stoked he's still out there doing it, playing music. A lot of us are kind of just, I haven't been as active as I want to be in the last year and a half. I mean, I'm kind of enjoying the break a little bit, to be honest with you, because I have to handle all the business aspects of things.
Right.
And I really want to focus, my attention now on my solo project, because I'm just kind of reaching that point where, like, okay, dude.
Well, if you need anyone to play any bass tracks, I can do that for you.
I'll let you know, man.
I still know how to play.
Well, as long as you still got a stand-up bass,
Yeah, I got all my gear still.
I would like to do a good traditional rockabilly song.
Okay.
Like original.
Well, that would be, if you want like traditional, that would be my buddy David Vasquez, our treasurer in the club. That's him all the way. He's an upright player. He played guitar in Embalmers, but he's been in a bunch of like traditional.
Doesn't necessarily need to be, traditional, but we'll figure it out one way or another. It'll be fun.
Let me know, because I would like to do that. I do want to get back into playing again. One thing I do want to do, and it's part of the reason why I actually started the beer club, one of the reasons, is I would love to bring my great-grandfather's beer back. El Rey, instead of El Rey Beer Club, do an El Rey Brewing Company. I would love at some point. Right now I'm learning the industry, this, that, and the other with the club, having a great time, learning how to brew beer, tasting the differences and the ingredients, things like that.
I've been doing the same thing the last couple of years, learning a lot about it. Like, my goal is to eventually, get it into can form just like this. I have a lot of demand for that already. I know people like the beer. I mean, I would love to be able to walk into a Vons or a liquor store and be like, hey, there's our beer right here,
Yeah, well, my family's brewery, like, they were set up with their own bottling and whatnot, and they were fully functional at the start of 33 when everything changed around and the legal limit went up. So all these individuals are like, ooh, I want to do these markets and stores and stuff. Ooh, I want to have a beer now. So they ended up white labeling all for like Lidix and Rocas and all these different markets up and down Meccas, up and down the state, doing, like real small print, brewed and bottled by El Rey Brewing Company, but it have their market's logo on there. So those are the kind of things I've been trying to find online and purchase, and then reuse, repurpose. Alex Policastro, he's a web designer. He's married to my cousin, who was the secretary of our club, and he does all our designs for most of our labels. Sometimes I fiddle with stuff too, but he's repurposed a lot of those original labels from the 30s. So that's one of the things that I want to do, is bring back the brewery and to use like the family story. Try and keep the recipes like to more a nostalgic kind of like retro feel, and then to reuse a lot of the original artwork on the labels for sure. Right. So that is something that I'm hoping will be in my future for sure.
Right on. Anything else you have?
Just
planned or?
Check out Citizen Brewers. Come to our end of year party at the Tower Bar in November. I think it's the 10th or the 11th, one of the two. Yeah. And check out Urethane and Crashing Forward. And I'm not sponsored or anything, but get out, support local bands and things like that. So that's all I really have. And thank you very much for having me.
Of course, my pleasure. The last thing I like to have all my guests do is, I'm
not taking my clothes off, buddy.
This isn't the King's casting couch. The last thing I like all my guests to do is
I have standards.
Share, some kind of affirmation or positive message to people. Like if someone wanted to become a musician or become an author, like,
say nope to dope and ugh to drugs. No.
Or a statement that you live your life by.
For me,
something like that.
For me, I have my hands in a lot of pots and I do a lot of different things. It doesn't seem odd to me or like it's just normal. But I know for me, like initially, some of the things I was like, I want to do that. And it seemed kind of unachievable. So if you're ever in that point, just set a goal, figure out how to get there, and take the steps. It's like quilt work or like baby steps, with my doctorate, with getting this club together, with the books that I've written and things like that. It's all just one little piece at a time. Just be patient and set little goals and actually achieve those goals, and you'll get where you want to go. And that's the only thing I have. Like, you can do it. It's not impossible. If someone else has fucking done it, So can you.
Yeah,
that
mind
kind of
over
thing,
matter,
so,
man.
Yeah.
You know? So you heard it from J. Michael himself, and it's been a pleasure having you on the show.
Likewise.
I appreciate it, and man, this is pretty tasty beer.
I already finished mine, so.
I finished mine a while ago.
Steam beer, the AKA California Common. It's a hybrid beer, a lager, and an ale. I won't get into the magic recipe secrets or anything like that, but it's tasty. It's blue collar. It's like PBR from 100 plus years ago.
Yeah.
So,
Well, I'm looking forward to the next event for the El Rey Beer Club.
September 30th, date night, couples brew session.
Yeah.
Be there.
So any viewers out there that want to be my date for the event, let me know.
We'll have a raffle and auction over here. Can I get 25 cents? Can I get 30?
I'll figure out a promotion for this episode.
You should, man.
A contest.
Brew beer. Come on a date. Yeah. All right, brother.
All right. And on that note, that wraps up another episode of the King's Couch.
The King, El Rey.
I'm gonna get back to chit-chatting with my buddy, J. Michael here, and I will catch you guys later.